The morning was quiet. The street was empty, and Daniel sat inside his small house waiting for his usual delivery. It was nothing special, just mail, bills, and maybe a small package, but for him it was part of his daily routine. Every day, almost at the same time, the alien mail carrier came by, tall and calm, with strange silver skin that shimmered under the sunlight. Most humans had gotten used to aliens walking in their towns, but Daniel never stopped noticing how different they really were. Today, however, something was off. When he opened the door, the alien woman stood there with his mail, but her breathing was heavy, her eyes glowing faintly with a soft blue light. Her hands trembled as she held out the letters, almost dropping them on the floor. Daniel frowned. "You okay?" he asked, his voice casual but curious. The alien tilted her head slowly, staring at him longer than usual, as if she was trying to study every detail of his face. She didn't answer right away, and that silence stretched too long. Finally she said in a low voice, "Human, your scent is stronger today." Daniel blinked, confused. "My scent? It's just soap, maybe coffee," he said with a little laugh. But she didn't laugh. Her pupils widened, and she stepped closer, too close for his comfort. Daniel felt the air shift. Something strange, something dangerous. The mail slipped from her hand and scattered across the porch. She didn't even look down to pick it up. Instead, she whispered, "It has begun." Daniel froze. "What has begun?" he asked, his voice sharper now. The alien leaned forward, close enough for him to feel the heat from her breath. "Mating season," she whispered, and her voice shook like it carried both fear and desire. Daniel stepped back quickly, his heart racing. This was not normal. This was not just another delivery. He had heard rumors in bars, whispers from other humans who worked with aliens. They said alien biology was unpredictable, that once a year their instincts took control, but no one ever explained what it looked like up close. Until now, the alien mail carrier suddenly bent down, picking up his letters with shaking hands. Her fingers brushed his by accident, and her skin was hot, far hotter than any human body should be. Daniel pulled his hand away, but she smiled faintly, her lips trembling as if holding back words. He felt his throat dry. The normal quiet routine of the morning was gone, replaced with a tension he couldn't understand. She handed him the mail again, but instead of leaving, she stayed. Her eyes never moved away from him, glowing brighter now. "Why are you still here?" Daniel asked, trying to sound calm, but his voice broke slightly. The alien tilted her head again, then whispered, "Because I must choose." Daniel's chest tightened. "Choose what?" he asked. Her answer was a whisper carried by the wind. "A mate." Daniel nearly dropped the letters, his mind racing. This was insane, he thought. He just wanted his mail, not to get dragged into alien instincts. But the alien woman's body language told him she was serious. Her glowing eyes locked on him like a hunter watching prey. The silence stretched between them, and Daniel felt the world around him grow smaller, like only the two of them existed on that porch. Finally, he cleared his throat and forced a nervous laugh. "Look, I think you should go," he said firmly, pointing toward the street. For a moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, almost unwillingly, she stepped back. But as she turned, she whispered again, "Tomorrow, it will be stronger." Daniel's stomach sank, her words echoing in his ears long after she walked away. He closed the door quickly and locked it, leaning against the wood as if that could keep her away. His heart pounded in his chest, his hands shaking. He looked down at the letters, but the words on the paper blurred in front of his eyes, because now he wasn't thinking about bills or packages. He was thinking about what tomorrow might bring. The room felt colder, the air heavier. Daniel sat at the table, staring at the mail, replaying her glowing eyes in his mind. It was not just strange, it was dangerous, and though he didn't want to admit it, part of him already knew. This was only the beginning. The next morning came too soon, and Daniel barely slept the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the alien mail carrier's glowing stare. Her strange words echoed in his head. "Tomorrow, it will be stronger." He tried to convince himself it was just nonsense, maybe a cultural misunderstanding, but deep inside, he knew something was coming, and he could not avoid it. Daniel made coffee, but his hands shook as he poured it into the cup. His small house felt unsafe, like any moment the door would burst open. He kept glancing at the clock, the hour slowly ticking toward her usual delivery time. His heart thumped louder with every passing minute. He almost wanted to leave the house, but fear of running into her outside kept him trapped. Then the knock came, sharp and fast. Daniel froze, staring at the door. He thought about ignoring it, but curiosity and dread pulled him forward. He opened the door a crack, and there she was, the alien mail carrier, her silver skin shimmering brighter than yesterday, her breathing heavier, her eyes burning like small suns. "Your delivery," she said, her voice deeper, trembling with something she could not control. She held out the mail, but her hands shook so violently that the letters slipped again, scattering across the porch. Daniel stepped forward to pick them up, but before he could, she dropped to her knees, her face only inches from his. Her strange scent filled the air, sweet but overwhelming, like heated metal mixed with flowers. He stumbled back, clutching the letters to his chest. "What are you doing?" he asked. Ed, his voice uneven. The alien looked up, her eyes wide, glowing brighter now. "You don't understand," she whispered. "My season. It chooses for me." Daniel felt sweat run down his neck, his body screaming for him to run, but his feet wouldn't move. She rose slowly, standing taller than him, her shadow covering the doorway. Every muscle in his body tensed, as if preparing for danger. He tried to sound calm. "Listen. I'm not part of this. I just want my mail, nothing more." But she tilted her head and smiled faintly, a smile that was both beautiful and terrifying. Her glowing patterns spread across her skin like living tattoos, shifting and pulsing with her heartbeat. "Do you think you have a choice?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a weight that pressed against his chest. Daniel's breath caught. Was she threatening him or warning him? Suddenly, footsteps echoed from across the street. A neighbor stepped out, an old man carrying trash. The alien turned her head sharply, her glowing eyes locking onto him. The old man froze, then quickly went back inside, slamming his door shut. Daniel realized something. Everyone knew what was happening, and no one would interfere. The air grew heavier, the silence unbearable. Daniel finally pushed forward, trying to close the door, but the alien's hand shot out, pressing against the wood, stronger than steel. Her touch burned through the doorframe, and Daniel gasped. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't want this." For a moment, she stared at him, her chest rising and falling quickly. Then, to his surprise, she stepped back, lowering her hand, but her words shook him deeper than her touch. "You can't hide from instinct," she whispered. "I will return." Her glowing eyes softened, but her body trembled as if fighting itself. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing like heavy drums on the pavement. Daniel S.E. lammed the door shut and locked it again. He leaned back against the wall, his breath coming in short bursts. This was worse than yesterday, far worse. If this was only the second day, what would the third bring? He tried to think clearly, but his thoughts spun like a storm. He considered calling someone, local officials, alien patrol, anyone, but deep inside he feared the answer. What if no one cared? What if this was normal to them? Would they even help a single human caught in an alien's biology? The sun outside dipped lower, shadows creeping into the house. Daniel sat at the table again, staring at the scattered letters. Each envelope looked ordinary, yet each one felt like a chain dragging him into something he couldn't escape. He picked one up, but the words blurred again, his mind replaying the way her skin glowed. Her whisper replayed louder in his head. "Do you think you have a choice?" Night fell, and the house grew silent. Daniel stayed awake, every creak in the wood making him jump. His eyes kept darting to the door, afraid she would return in the dark. The world outside felt unsafe, the stars above heavy with secrets, and he realized something chilling. This was no longer about mail. It was about survival, and tomorrow would only get worse. Daniel woke up to the sound of another knock, sharp and steady. His eyes were heavy from little sleep, but his heart jumped in fear. He already knew who it was. There could be no one else. The alien mail carrier had returned, and the strange pull of her presence filled the air even before he opened the door. He thought about ignoring it, letting her stand outside, but the knocking grew louder, and with every strike, the walls of his small house seemed to shake. Finally, he opened the door a crack, only to see her standing there again. This time, she carried not just his mail, but something else, a small box wrapped in shimmering alien fabric, glowing faintly like starlight. She held it out with trembling hands. "A gift," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "I didn't ask for this," he said firmly. But her eyes locked on him, glowing brighter, her voice breaking with emotion. "It's tradition. When the season comes, we give gifts to the chosen." Daniel felt his stomach twist. Chosen. That word echoed in his ears. He stepped back, shaking his head. "No, I'm not chosen. I'm just a man who wanted his mail." Her expression flickered, something between sadness and hunger. "You can deny it," she whispered, "but your scent calls to me, stronger than any other." Daniel clenched his jaw, refusing to take the box, but she placed it on his doorstep anyway, her hands shaking. When she looked up again, her glowing skin pulsed with strange patterns, like waves rolling under her silver flesh. Neighbors peeked through their windows across the street. Curtains twitched, eyes watched, but no one dared to step outside. Daniel felt their silence cut deep, as if the whole town had abandoned him. They all knew what was happening, but none of them wanted to be part of it. The alien woman turned back to him, her breathing heavier, her voice unsteady. "Do not fight me, human. The season makes me restless. I cannot stop myself from coming to you." Daniel's chest tightened, fear and anger mixing inside him. "Listen," he said sharply, "you can't just force this on me. I didn't ask for it." Her head tilted, and a faint smile curved on her lips, beautiful but frightening. "Some things are not asked," she whispered. "They simply are." Before he could answer, she suddenly leaned closer. Her glowing patterns brightened, pulsing faster. Her breath hitched as she whispered again, "Every moment away from you hurts. Do you feel it too?" Daniel stepped back quickly, slamming the door shut before she could cross the threshold. He leaned against the wood, his heart pounding like a drum. On the other side, he could still hear her breathing, slow, heavy, and desperate. This passed before her footsteps faded. Daniel peered through the window to see her walking away slowly, her figure glowing faintly in the dim morning light. The small gift box still sat on his doorstep, glowing faintly like a curse. He wanted to throw it away, but curiosity pulled at him. Finally, he picked it up, the alien fabric warm against his skin, almost alive. Inside, he found a strange crystal, glowing softly, and a strip of alien writing carved into it. He couldn't read it, but somehow the meaning pressed into his mind. Bond. Daniel dropped the crystal back into the box, slamming it shut. He shoved it under the table, out of sight, but not out of mind. No matter where he hid it, he felt it pulsing, calling to him like a second heartbeat. The day dragged on painfully slow. He tried to distract himself with work, cleaning, and cooking, but every shadow reminded him of her glowing eyes. Every knock in his imagination made his chest tighten. By evening, another noise came, this time at his back door. Daniel froze, slowly walking toward it. When he opened it, his blood ran cold. The alien stood in his backyard, waiting, not holding mail, not holding gifts, just staring at him. She didn't speak, didn't move, only watched, her body glowing under the fading light of the sun. Daniel slammed the door shut again, pulling down every blind. He sat at the table, his hands covering his face. He was trapped, surrounded not by walls, but by her attention. Night fell, and the glowing box under his table pulsed faintly. Daniel stared at it with dread. He realized now, this wasn't just unwanted attention. This was a storm building around him, and no one, not even his neighbors, would step in to help. For the first time in his life, Daniel wished for a simple, boring day. But deep down, he knew those days were gone. The alien mail carrier had chosen him, and her season was only beginning. Daniel did not sleep well that night. Every creak of the floor, every whistle of the wind made him sit up in fear. The glowing box pulsed faint. A lie from under the table, reminding him he was not free. By morning, his eyes were heavy, his body tired, but his mind sharper than ever. He knew this problem would not go away on its own. He stepped outside carefully, scanning the street. The alien mail carrier was not there yet, but he felt her presence everywhere. The neighbor's curtains moved again, eyes watching him in silence. It was as if the whole street had agreed to stay quiet, to leave him alone in his nightmare. Finally, Daniel had enough. He walked across the street and knocked on the old man's door. At first, there was no answer. Then the door cracked open slightly. The old man's wrinkled face appeared, his eyes wide and nervous. "What do you want?" the man whispered harshly, as if afraid someone else was listening. Daniel swallowed hard. "You saw her yesterday. You know what's happening, don't you?" The old man's eyes darted left and right before pulling Daniel inside quickly, shutting the door behind them. Inside, the air was heavy with smoke from a small heater. The old man leaned close, whispering, "You should leave, boy. Leave town before it's too late." Daniel frowned. "Too late? For what? She's just a mail carrier. The old man cut him off, shaking his head. "Not just anything. Her kind, during the season, they don't think like us. Instinct takes over, and once one of them marks you, you're theirs until the season ends, or until one of you breaks." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Breaks?" The old man's face turned grim. "Some humans don't survive it. Others don't stay the same." Daniel's mind spun, his heart pounding faster. He thought of the glowing eyes, the heat of her skin, the way she whispered, "Do you think you have a choice?" It was not just attraction, it was something more powerful, something dangerous. The old man lowered his voice even further. "Years ago, another human here was chosen. A young farmer. At first, people thought it was nothing, just a strange friendship. But then she came every day, stronger and stronger. And the boy was never seen again after the season ended. Some say he left, others say he didn't survive." Daniel's stomach turned, the warning sinking deep into his bones. He whispered, "So what do I do?" The old man's eyes filled with pity. "There is no easy way. You can run, but she'll find you. You can fight, but you won't win. Or, you can endure until her season passes, but endurance has its own price." Daniel shook his head, refusing to accept any of those answers. He left the old man's house quickly, his mind burning with fear and frustration. As soon as he stepped outside, he froze. The alien mail carrier was standing at the end of the street, holding her empty delivery bag, staring straight at him. Even from a distance, her eyes glowed faintly, and Daniel felt his body stiffen as if invisible chains wrapped around him. She tilted her head slowly, and though she said nothing, he understood her message clearly. She was waiting, watching, claiming. Daniel rushed back into his own house, slamming the door shut. He pressed his back against it, his breath ragged, his thoughts in chaos. He was not just dealing with unwanted attention, he was trapped in something far bigger, far darker. The town knew, the neighbors knew, and none of them would help, because this was not their fight. It was his. Later that day, another knock came, softer this time. Daniel opened the door carefully, but it wasn't her. It was a middle-aged woman from the corner house. She looked at him with sad eyes, whispering, "She won't stop. You must prepare yourself." Daniel frowned. "Why are you all so afraid? Why won't anyone stop her?" The woman shook her head, her voice trembling. "Because to stop her is to fight her instincts, and no one wins against that. Not human, not alien. You were unlucky, Daniel. You were chosen." Her words struck him harder than any blow. Unlucky, chosen, trapped, the W's. Omen placed a small jar in his hand, filled with strange herbs. "This will help mask your scent," she whispered quickly. "It may give you some peace for a few hours, maybe a night. Use it. Hide yourself." Before he could ask more, she hurried away, pulling her scarf tightly as if afraid to be seen speaking to him. Daniel stared at the jar, his hand trembling. Was this his life now? Taking herbs to hide from his own mail carrier? The thought almost made him laugh, but fear crushed the sound before it escaped. He placed the jar on the table beside the glowing gift box, the two objects pulsing side by side, one given to him as a bond, the other given to him as a shield. And in that moment, Daniel realized something chilling. Even if he used the herbs, even if he hid, she would not stop. The old man's words returned to him. Leave before it's too late. But could he leave? Would she follow him no matter where he went? The street outside grew quiet again. Too quiet. Daniel sat in the silence, feeling the weight of the town's warning pressing down on him. This was not just a strange encounter anymore. This was survival against something ancient and unstoppable, and as the sun set, he knew one thing for certain: tomorrow would be worse. The night was long, and Daniel barely closed his eyes. Every sound outside made him jump. Every shadow across his window felt like her glowing figure. The jar of herbs sat on the table, its bitter smell filling the room, but even that could not calm his nerves. Beside it, the alien gift box pulsed faintly, a reminder that he was already marked, already chosen. By morning, Daniel's body felt weak, but his mind sharp with fear. He paced the floor, thinking of the warnings, the old man's story, the woman's sad eyes. They all told him the same thing. She won't stop. He knew he had to act before things grew worse. But when the knock came that day, it was not gentle. It was not steady. It was loud, pounding, like thunder shaking his door. Daniel froze, his breath stuck in his throat. The pounding grew harder, faster, until cracks formed in the wood. Then a voice followed, trembling yet strong. "Human, open! Do not hide from me!" Her words burned through the walls, her voice shaking with desperation. Daniel pressed his back against the door, as if his weight could keep her out. Then the pounding stopped, and for a moment silence filled the house. Daniel thought maybe she had gone, but then he heard something worse. The sound of footsteps circling the house, slow and deliberate, like a predator searching for the weak spot in a cage. He rushed to the back window and pulled the curtain aside. There she was, standing in the yard, her skin glowing with living patterns that pulsed like fire. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her body trembling as if every muscle was at war with itself. She looked up and locked eyes with him through the glass. Her lips moved, whispering words he barely heard. "Why do you resist me?" Daniel's heart pounded, his hands shaking as he pulled the curtain shut again. He backed away, but the sound of glass cracking filled the air. She was pressing her hand against the window, the heat making it bend under her touch. Daniel grabbed the jar of herbs, opened it, and quickly rubbed the bitter powder across his arms and neck. The smell was sharp, choking, but almost instantly, the glow in her eyes dimmed slightly. She stumbled back, hissing like the scent burned her lungs. For the first time, Daniel saw weakness in her. But it only lasted a moment, because soon her glow returned, stronger than before, and her trembling voice carried through the glass. "It doesn't matter. You are mine." That was the breaking point. Daniel realized he could not keep hiding. She would not stop. No herb, no locked door would hold her forever. He had to face her, if not with strength, then with words. He opened the back door slightly, standing in the frost. His heart racing. "You need to stop," he said firmly, his voice shaking but louder than ever before. "This isn't right. You're not thinking clearly. You're scaring me, and you don't even see it." The alien woman froze, her glowing skin flickering like a storm of light. Her breathing slowed, her eyes softened for just a moment. Then she whispered, almost like a child, "I don't want to scare you. I want to keep you." Her words sent chills down his spine. Daniel shook his head, forcing himself to stand taller. "I'm not yours. I'm not a prize you can claim. I'm a human being, and I have the right to say no." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Her glowing patterns flickered, her lips trembling as if she wanted to argue but could not. Finally, her voice broke, full of pain. "You think choice matters? My season doesn't care for words, it only knows need." She stepped closer, and Daniel felt his body stiffen. Her heat hit him like a wave, her scent filling the air, overwhelming his senses. For a moment, he felt his knees weaken, his mind slipping under her pull, but he clenched his fists, forcing himself to hold on. He whispered through clenched teeth, "If you really care, you'll control it. You'll fight it." Her eyes widened, glowing bright, and for a second, he thought she might strike him. Instead, she screamed, a sound so sharp the glass rattled. Her whole body shook, her glowing patterns flaring wildly before dimming again. She stumbled back, her chest heaving, and then, suddenly, she collapsed to her knees. Daniel stood frozen, unsure if she was faking or truly broken by the fight inside her. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "It hurts. To fight it hurts more than giving in." Daniel's chest tightened, fear and pity mixing painfully. For the first time, he saw her not just as a predator, but as someone trapped by her own nature. But even pity would not erase his fear. He stepped back slowly, closing the door, locking it once again. He leaned against it, his heart pounding. Outside, she remained on her knees, glowing faintly in the fading sunlight. Daniel whispered to himself, "This can't go on. It will kill us both." And in that moment, he knew the breaking point had been reached. Tomorrow, something had to change, or it would all end in disaster. The next day arrived heavy and silent. Daniel had not slept at all, his eyes bloodshot, his hands trembling. The alien mail carrier had stayed outside his house most of the night. Sometimes she whispered his name through the door. Sometimes she scratched softly at the wood. Each sound dug into his nerves until his body felt like it would break. By morning, she was gone, but Daniel knew she would return. He sat at his table, staring at the glowing box under it. The crystal inside pulsed faintly like a living heart, reminding him that he was already marked. He could no longer hide, no longer run. Today, he had to face her, no matter the cost. The knock came earlier than usual. Not soft, not thunderous. This time, steady and final. Daniel opened the door slowly, and there she was. Her silver skin glowed with bright patterns, shifting like fire. Her breathing was fast, her eyes burning with desperate hunger. She looked less like a mail carrier and more like something pulled straight out of legend. "Human," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You cannot resist me forever." Daniel's heart pounded, but he stood firm. "No," he said sharply. "And you cannot force me either." She tilted her head, her glowing patterns pulsing faster. "You think I want to hurt you? I don't. But my body, it screams for you. Every step away burns. Every breath without you feels like death." Her words cut deep, and for a moment Daniel saw her pain, but he shook his head. "That doesn't give you the right to chain me. You're not the only one suffering. I can't sleep. I can't breathe, because I know you're out there waiting, watching. That's not love. That's torment." The alien's lips trembled, her eyes glowing brighter. She stepped forward, and the heat from her body hit him like a furnace. Daniel staggered back, his chest heavy, his mind clouding under her scent. Her voice dropped lower, almost begging, "Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to stop, and I will." Daniel stared at her, realizing the truth. She wasn't in control. Her instincts were driving her, dragging her deeper each day. "Fight it," he said firmly, though his own voice shook. Her whole body tensed, glowing patterns flaring. "You don't understand," she screamed, her voice shaking the walls. "To fight it is pain worse than death." Daniel forced himself closer, even though his body screamed to run. "If you care at all, you'll do it. You'll fight. Not for you." He pointed to his chest. "For me." The alien's eyes widened, and for the first time, tears welled in her glowing gaze. She shook her head violently, her skin patterns flickering like broken lightning. Then suddenly, she lunged forward, her hand slamming against the wall beside him. The wood cracked under her strength, her face only inches from his. Her breath burned his skin, her glowing eyes locking onto his with terrifying intensity. Daniel's knees weakened, the pull of her instincts drowning him, but he clenched his fists, forcing words out through gritted teeth. "You will not own me." The alien froze, her chest rising and falling wildly. Her hand shook against the wall, her body trembling like it was being torn apart from the inside. Then, with a cry that was both rage and sorrow, she stumbled back. Her knees hit the floor, her glowing patterns flickering weakly. Her voice cracked. "It hurts. It hurts so much." Daniel felt his chest tighten, pity mixing with fear. She was not a monster by choice. She was a prisoner of her own biology. But even knowing that, he could not let her consume him. He took a deep breath, his voice softer now but still strong. "If you want me to survive this, you have to survive it too. Fight it. Endure it. If you don't, then you'll destroy us both." For a long moment, silence filled the room. The alien bowed her head, her body shaking, her hands gripping the floor as if holding herself together. Then, slowly, she looked up again, tears glowing on her silver skin. Her voice broke into a whisper. "I don't know if I can." Daniel stared at her, his heart pounding. "Then you'd better learn," he said, his tone heavy with finality. The two of them stood in the silence, neither moving. Outside, the street was quiet, neighbors watching from behind closed curtains. Everyone knew the confrontation had come, and everyone knew the outcome would decide everything. Would the alien mail carrier break free from her season, or would Daniel's resistance finally shatter? As the day faded into evening, the alien slowly stood again, her glowing patterns dimmer now, her breathing calmer. She whispered one last time, "Tomorrow will be the hardest." Then she turned and walked away into the shadows, leaving Daniel standing in his broken doorway, his body shaking, his mind racing, knowing one thing with certainty. The final clash was coming, and it would decide whether he lived, or became hers forever. The night before felt endless. Daniel sat in his chair with a lamp burning low, the herbs scattered across the table, the glowing gift box hidden beneath. He could not close his eyes, because he knew if he did, she might be there, knocking, whispering, or worse, breaking through his walls. Her last words haunted him. "Tomorrow will be the hardest." Now, as dawn's light slipped through the blinds, Daniel knew this was the day everything would change. The first sound was not knocking, but a strange hum. It vibrated through the floorboards, low and steady, almost like a heartbeat. Daniel stood slowly, his chest tight. Outside, the alien mail carrier stood at the edge of the street, her body glowing brighter than ever before. Her patterns burned like fire across her silver skin, each pulse stronger, faster. Her breathing was ragged, her arms trembling as though she was barely holding herself together. She saw him in the window and whispered his name, her voice carried by the wind. "Daniel." Her tone was no longer calm, no longer soft. It was desperate, like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. Daniel opened the door, his legs shaking, but his resolve steady. This was the confrontation he could not run from. She staggered forward, each step heavy, as if walking through a storm inside her own body. Her glowing eyes locked on him, filled with both hunger and pain. "Please," she begged, "don't push me away anymore. I cannot survive it." Daniel's throat tightened, fear mixing with pity. "You don't need me to survive," he said, his voice sharp but his hands trembling. "You need control. You need to fight your season, not me." Her face twisted, her lips trembling. "I've tried. Every night, every moment away from you. It feels like knives cutting into me." She reached out, her hand glowing, heat radiating like fire. Daniel stepped back, but he didn't slam the door this time. Instead, he lifted the herb jar in one hand and the glowing box in the other. "You gave me this," he said, shaking the box. "A bond I never wanted. But the town gave me this." He lifted the jar. "A way to hide from you. Two choices. But I refuse both." The alien froze, her eyes wide. Daniel's voice grew stronger, his chest rising. "If this bond is real, then it can be broken, not with herbs, not with running, but with will. Yours and mine. If you don't fight for control now, we both lose." Her body shook violently, glowing patterns flaring like lightning under her skin. She fell to her knees, clutching her head, screaming. The sound pierced the air, sharp and painful, windows rattling. neighbors covering their ears behind closed doors. Daniel stood firm, every instinct telling him to run, but he didn't. Instead, he shouted, "You're stronger than your instincts. Prove it." Her scream broke into sobs, tears glowing as they rolled down her face. Her hands slammed against the ground, leaving burns in the dirt. For long minutes she shook, her body fighting itself. Then slowly, painfully slowly, the glow began to fade, her breathing steadied, her trembling slowed, and when she looked up at Daniel again, her eyes no longer burned with hunger. They glowed faintly, but softer, filled with exhaustion and something else. Gratitude. "It's quiet," she whispered, her voice weak. For the first time, "It's quiet." Daniel's chest loosened, relief washing over him, but his body remained tense. He asked carefully, "You fought it?" She nodded slowly, her silver hair falling across her face. "Yes, but it nearly killed me." Daniel stepped closer, though his legs still shook. "And me? What happens to me now?" The alien lowered her head, her glowing skin now faint and dim. "You are free," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I release you. The bond will not hold you anymore." Daniel's shoulders slumped, his breath shaky. He almost couldn't believe it. After endless days of fear, the storm had finally broken. She stood unsteadily, her body weak. Without another word, she placed his mail gently on the porch. Then she turned and walked away slowly, her glowing patterns fading with every step. The street remained silent, the neighbors watching from behind curtains. No one came out, no one said a word. But Daniel felt the shift in the air. This battle was over. He closed the door and sat down, his body shaking with exhaustion. The glowing box no longer pulsed, its light dead. The herb jar sat useless now, its bitter smell fading. Daniel placed his head in his hands, whispering to himself, "It's done. It's finally done." But deep inside, he knew something had changed forever. He had stared into the heart of an alien's instincts and survived. And though she had left him free, her glowing eyes would never leave his memory, because sometimes survival was not about strength or escape. It was about standing firm when the universe itself tried to claim you. And Daniel had stood firm,